going to applique this heart using the invisible stitch. In other words, the stitch that I want to do here is not a feature of this applique. It's just going to disappear. I'm using a contrasting thread. You would use a thread that would match the color that you are sewing. In this case, I would be sewing either with white or with blue. But it is a turned applique, so the edges have been turned no more than 1/4 of an inch. Normally, you can even do less than that. But I don't want these stitches to show. So the way I do that is that my stitch is, or my needle is going to run inside of this fold. So along the edge of the applique. So, and I'm only going to take little bites of the fabric, and then I'm going to run the needle, little bite, and I'm going to run the needle inside of this fold, and then I'm going to take a little bite of the fabric, and again I'm going to run the needle along the inside of the fold. And the better you have this fabric turned ahead of time, of course, that better it works. So my stitch is so tiny that you can barely see it. So again, let's see if I can get a little closer here. It does have trouble focusing if I do get too close. But I'm going to take a little bite of the fabric, and I mean, when I say a little, I mean really just a tiny little bite of fabric, and then I run the needle to my next place in the fold. So it's in the fold of this applique, and I'm going to continue to do that all the way around so that you really can't distinguish the sewing on the applique. It just disappears. So again, I'm just going to follow this fold, be consistent with the distance between these stitches. The smaller the stitch, the better it can go around these corners. So very long stitches, and you won't have a smooth roundness. It'll become very jagged, and so you don't want any points. I'm going to adjust here a little bit so that I don't end up with a little point here. There we go. And it came back out. Use the back of your sewing needle. It doesn't catch the fabric when you're trying to do that. So I have a tendency, my pin has come out, so my little heart is now a little bit crooked on here, and we're going to pretend that that's exactly how I meant for it to look. But one thing that you can do is you can glue the heart down with just a glue stick. So you just have a little dab of glue down on it, and that does help to keep it in place so that you don't pull your heart or whatever shape it is that you're using out of shape, and you don't end up with the whole thing twisting on you like I'm doing here. So do as I say, not as I do, clearly, so that you can get a nice outcome. So if your thread matches the background, all these very small little stitches would just become invisible to the eye. I have deliberately used a contrasting color so it would a little bit show, and to give you the ability to see what it is that I am doing. I will come back when I am all the way done. So I have sewn all the way around. Note that I didn't start where one might anticipate, like on this point or this point. I actually started along this side seam. I find that you have a cleaner edge if you start at one of these rather than these points, because at the point you just want to make sure that the stitch is very clean, and therefore you rather not have a knot starting here and then a knot ending here. It adds bulk, whereas on this side, along this side edge, the knots just become invisible. So you can see how I've got these tiny little bites of fabric, and again I'm going to knot twice. I always need two hands when in this method of knotting, but it always puts a knot very close to the fabric, and it's a double knot. So as I pull on this knot, and I'm pulling very tightly, you can see that it's not pulling on the fabric, it's just pulling on itself. It pulls on the thread and not on the fabric. Therefore I always like using this knot specifically. And so this is applique with this invisible line of stitching so that you are, in essence, you cannot see the stitching at all. The invisible is what you would probably want to use more often if you are sewing an applique on a garment, so that it just simply becomes a part of the look of the garment, and it's a very refined application.